Welcome to a very special episode on Turkey Day from your folks over here at Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. Like I said, it is Turkey Day, it is Thanksgiving, and man, I love me some Thanksgiving, especially the food. That's one of my highlights of it, but just welcome being here. It is Thanksgiving Day, and I know you guys are probably spending time with family, still making food, and we appreciate you being here. But we still have a lot to cover because sports never rest. It's still going on 24/7, and we're here to bring that to you. So I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and beside me, I've got David Street.
What's up, everybody? And if you're wondering about my new background, I'm actually up in Orlando visiting family right now. But I'm still here. The grind never stops.
Absolutely, it never does. And also we have Ed Smith.
Gobble, gobble, y'all.
Gobble,
I was
gobble.
going to
Yes,
say
sir.
that, but, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I would have failed miserably, but welcome, guys. Like I said, Thanksgiving, and I'm gonna go ahead and start this off here. Thanksgiving and sports, it does come together. Yes, you may think, oh, pilgrims and Indians and everything else that comes with it, food, of course, food, but Thanksgiving and sports for me has always been the same. In my household, it has always been the same because we live and breathe sports just as we do with food. We do not have the Thanksgiving Day parade on our TV. We have the pregame show to the football games on our TV. From the minute we wake up, it's on. I'm listening to the pregame show, whether it's Terry Bradshaw saying a bad joke, but yet it's still funny at the same time, whatever it may be. But I love watching it and I love having it in the background, especially if I'm still cooking. But it's just one of those things that ever since I can remember as a kid that we always had it on. That's just how it was. Thanksgiving to me has always been the food, family, and football, hence all three F's. But just a little background in history of Thanksgiving in football. This all started all the way back in 1934. And if you didn't know, it's the Detroit Lions, formerly the Detroit Spartans, that actually started that. They actually came from Ohio originally. Who would have thought Ohio? But they moved from Ohio to then go to Detroit, where they decided, we're going to put a game on Thanksgiving. We're going to try to get viewers. We're going to get those fans to really start this team up. So that's when it all started. It was just the Detroit Lions that started it. It was in 1966 that actually the Cowboys came along and they were like, well, let's join this as well. Even though the players didn't like it, it was the management that was like, you know what? I think the Lions are onto something. Let's join this as well. And it's kind of been a staple in America ever since. The Cowboys and Lions every Thanksgiving. They aren't playing each other, but we do have two games that it had always been. But 2006 came along and the NFL was like, let's add another game. And of course, the fan in me is like, heck yeah, let's add more. Let's do it. I mean, I'm sitting home anyways. It's not like I'm working. Why not have football on? This is what I live for. So yes, they added a third game, and it's not any specific team that is part of it. It's just more football. And for me, I'm loving it, especially if I'm sitting there eating dinner. That's what's best for me. Everyone's has different opinions, but for me, if I'm eating dinner and I'm watching the football game, I'm in heaven. So since 2006, we have had 3 games, and it sounds like it's going to continue to be that way because people watch the games, and rightfully so. So I mean,
Yeah.
you guys, can you remember your earliest memory in watching games on Thanksgiving?
I know mine was when I was a kid, growing up in the Dallas area. It was the Cowboys and Redskins. That seemed to be a staple for Thanksgiving Day, and it just seemed to fit just perfectly. Within that, whether it be during Tom Landry's time or as other games came in with Jimmy Johnson, and the Bounty Bowl and the Leon Lett game. Those are all games that are just etched in the memory of being NFL on Thanksgiving. But it isn't just the NFL on Thanksgiving. There have been so many great college games that were played on Thanksgiving, and in fact, for quite some time, it was Texas A&M and Texas Longhorns Thanksgiving night under the lights. And in fact, the last edition of the Lone Star Showdown was on Thanksgiving night before Texas A&M went into the SEC. So those are some huge things that I still associate with Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving football.
Yeah, I don't remember what my first Thanksgiving NFL memory is. I'm sure it involved the Lions somehow. I mean, the Lions have become synonymous with Thanksgiving. Like, you guys know that there's a scene from Family Guy where Brian the dog falls into a lion encounter, and the lions are growling at him, about to eat him, and Brian says, "Hey, it's Thanksgiving. Shouldn't you be out losing a football game right now?" You know,
Yes.
like like Detroit, the Lions and Thanksgiving have become like the sort of cultural duo, sort of icon. Like, you can't, when it comes to football, you can't think of Thanksgiving without thinking of the Lions and occasionally the Cowboys.
Yeah, absolutely. It just kind of goes hand in hand, and I love it at the end of the game when they kind of have like the players of the game, and they give them a turkey leg. It's a really cool tradition because these guys are missing their Thanksgiving dinners with their families. I mean, if they play the early game and they are at home, they still can do that. And a lot of people probably disagree with that aspect of it, but they aren't the only people that work on Thanksgiving. There are many people that work still on Thanksgiving, and they do it over and over again. But it is just such a great tradition, and unfortunately it's at their expense, but I enjoy watching it. So I can never get enough of it. But another thing that I can't get enough of is all this talk that's going on with the new college football rankings. It just seems like it's always bound to have some type of controversy, some parody, and well, we saw it this week, and I know I've seen a lot of comments online. David's had his opinions, and I want to hear your opinion actually right now, David. I mean, tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of change in the top four, other than the fact that Washington jumped ahead of FSU, and that was absolutely the right decision. You know, and if you're wondering why, like, why FSU dropped to number 5 and Washington move up. Okay, first of all, like, I have to wonder if you're even a serious person right now, because FSU lost the heart and soul of not just their offense, but literally their entire team. Okay, like, Jordan Travis is a massive loss. You can't suffer a loss like that and not expect any movement in the rankings. Now, the commissioner apparently said, like, "Oh no, you know, Jordan Travis's injury had no effect on it." Yeah, okay, that's a lie right there. We know that. And I tweeted on our show's account. Let me bring it up real quick here. So there's this account called College Football Report, where I'm not going to read the whole tweet from them, but there's a part where they say FSU moving down to 5 in the newest rankings isn't because of Travis's injury. And so I quoted that, and then I wrote, "LMFAO, that is such a lie, and you know it." Then someone commented, "The college football commissioner literally said exactly that." And then I said, "Yeah, and I'm saying that he's lying. You're going to sit there and tell me that JT's injury didn't have an effect on the movement of the rankings, that it was just a coincidence? Come on now, LOL." And then the guy responds, "Washington beat 11th ranked Oregon State on the road. They were moving up regardless of FSU." And you know what? That is a very fair point, okay? And I'm sure that is true. Like, I'm sure that Jordan Travis's injury was not the only reason why FSU moved down. But make no mistake, it was a big reason, because I guarantee you that if it wasn't for Jordan Travis's injury, FSU would be number 4 right now. But alas, they're not. Washington is. And I think you can justify Washington. Wait, I don't know if I said number 1. If I did, I meant to say number 4, but you know what I mean. But even so, I think you can justify the Huskies being ahead of the Noles right now. For one, Washington still has their starting quarterback in Michael Penix, who is one of the Heisman favorites and is more than likely going to get an invitation to New York. Okay. And you know what else too? Washington has played a much tougher strength of schedule than FSU has. I think Washington is like in the top 15, then in FSU's is like 63, which I did not realize. I know FSU has got a couple of really good wins, but they've also played some really bad teams. And so you can't be surprised at all by what we've seen, because be honest, who deserves to be up? They're both undefeated, right? Okay. But one team has played a tougher strength of schedule, and that same team still has their starting quarterback, who is one of the best players in the country. Okay. If you're going to tell me that the other team who has played a weaker strength of schedule and does not have their superstar quarterback, if you're going to tell me that team deserves to be, over the other team, then I can't take you seriously at all.
I get what you're saying, David. Just a point of order, Washington has a number one strength of record in the entire college football landscape. So by resume, they would certainly jump Florida State, and whether Jordan Travis is there or not. And in fact, there can be some conversation about Washington jumping Michigan because of if you're looking at strength of record and looking at the resume versus the eye test. Essentially the college football committee, they are looking at either eye test or record, but they're never looking at, it doesn't seem like they're ever looking at both and using that as their measuring stick. In my opinion, Florida State is right where they should have been 2 weeks ago. But with this win over Oregon State, Washington is finally in the place where it belongs, which is the top four, until they are proven otherwise.
And that is a definitely fair point, Ed. But another opinion that I have about Washington is that they certainly pass the strength of schedule test, but in my opinion, they don't pass the eye test at all. And if you're hearing that, just calm down, take a breath. Let me explain. But Matthew and Ed, have you guys noticed that after Washington's first 3 or 4 games or whatever, the vast majority of their games have been very, very close? I don't have the average or numbers right in front of me, but I'm pretty sure in their last 6-7 games, they've been beating teams by an average of 7, 8, 9 points. Most of them, I'm pretty sure, have been by single digits. They're still winning, and they are winning against a tough strength of schedule. But when you look at the eye test and the way that they've been winning, they don't pass the eye test, in my opinion. I know that sounds like a controversial take, but I'm just calling it how I see it. What do you think, Matthew? Or Ed, whoever wants to go.
Well, I mean, I think as far as the eye test goes, they are better than Florida State. But here's my thing. I'll go back and then I'll go back to this point too. But the biggest controversy to me is not the fact that Washington jumped them, and especially around when the Jordan Travis injury happened, is why did it take so long? And two things can be right at once. This is true. It is saying that that has gone around, that it could have been because Washington did have another ranked win, which should have propelled them, but then also the Jordan Travis injury too. But there has been an anomaly. The first ever college football playoff, 2014, I remember it like it was yesterday because Oregon lost. But I wish I could erase that memory, but I can't. But the Ohio State Buckeyes not only lost their starting quarterback, they lost their backup quarterback and went with their third string quarterback and actually won the national championship game. So there's got to be that plays in the back of the commissioner's mind here, of course, because that has actually happened before. And I don't think Florida State, if they finish undefeated, should get punished for that. I think that they will make the playoff. But to me, it's why did it happen now when Washington should have been ahead of them probably 2-3 weeks ago? Yes, they may not pass the current eye test if to move them maybe forward more, but they passed the eye test over Florida State, that's for sure. So I just think that it's why is it happening now, and that kind of worries me a little bit with the committee, because it seemed like they kept showing their hands the whole year, the whole time they've done these rankings, especially with how consistent they've been with Texas over Alabama because the head-to-head. But now it's like, why are they flipping all of a sudden with Florida State and Washington? Because I would really like to know, because that worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is hubris. The committee had Florida State in that top 3 to 4 idea when the season started, and they don't want to go back on what they thought at the beginning of the year, especially if nothing has really gotten in the way of Florida State, not being in that top 4. So they don't want to go back on their own idea, their own, well, we knew better at the start of the year versus where they are now. So part of it is hubris on the committee's point, to, only put Florida State beneath that top 4 until they are, there's a clear cut somebody better than them.
Yeah, and to your point, Matthew, about Ohio State getting in with a third string quarterback. Well, what also helped Ohio State was that they absolutely obliterated Wisconsin, 59-0. It wasn't even close. And it was such a convincing win that really the committee had no choice but to leave them in. And I'm kind of wondering, if not even if Ohio State lost, if they had barely beaten Wisconsin with that third string quarterback, I kind of wonder if Ohio State would have let in. And I've talked about this before, maybe not on here, but I think I mentioned it on Twitter, that if Florida State goes undefeated, if they beat us, and if they have a convincing win over Louisville, they'll be in the playoffs. Okay. But if they do beat Louisville, but it's not so convincing, I'm not sure they will be in the playoffs.
I think it depends on what happens with the other games, because you are going to have other games that play out, especially this weekend, which I'm about to get to, of how close are those games and how close are the SEC championship game, because I do think that may play a factor. And if Texas wins out, I mean, there's a lot of pieces that have to fall in place, but I just think an undefeated FSU team would get in over a one-loss Texas team, and possibly a one-loss Oregon team, because they've just proven all year they've stayed undefeated and they shouldn't get punished for their injury. But you're absolutely right with the 59-0 win over Wisconsin with Ohio State, because look what happened next. They beat the number 1 ranked team, Alabama, in the Sugar Bowl, and that game
wasn't even close, by the way. It was a 42-35 score, but Ohio State was in control for most of that game.
Yeah, and I will say this, it is tough when you have a third string quarterback, because you didn't really plan, or that there's not a whole lot of film on him either, especially with the amount of games he played. But I will say, especially since I saw it firsthand, Cardale Jones killed us. He absolutely obliterated us. But also they had a guy named Ezekiel Elliott who you just could not tackle. But speaking of Ezekiel Elliott, Ohio State, and how things are going to play out, it's a rivalry week. This is one of the biggest weeks, if not the biggest weeks and weekends in all of college football. It has so much rich history that just dates back many, many decades, even century. And we're going to start with probably one of the biggest rivalries of them all. It is called The Game. And Ed, please break it down for us.
I'll be happy to do so. How fun is it that some of the biggest rivalries in college football are going to be so relevant to this playoff this year? It is just amazing time to be a college football fan. But getting to the game, you mentioned how many years and how far back some of these rivalries go. We're talking 118 meetings between Ohio State and, as they call it, the team up north, Michigan Wolverines. But Michigan does have the edge in this rivalry, 60-52-6. Right now, Ryan Day, he's trying to get that 2-2 in the game because he has lost the last two to Michigan, and we're still in that Jim Harbaugh suspension. So Sharon Moore is going to lead out the Wolverines in this matchup. Now, one of the biggest keys to victory that I'm seeing in this is how well can Travion Henderson tote the rock. Michigan's defense is number 1 in the country. They have just been stout, and the entire team works together to basically squeeze you in and not let you do anything. Well, what can stop that? A good running game. Travion Henderson, he has been on fire the past couple of weeks as he's gotten healthier through the season. And, he's going to be a person that I see making a huge difference in this game, because you look at Kyle McCord, against the highest ranked teams that he has worked that he has played against this year, he's only completing 60% of his passes and only has 1 touchdown. So that means that you're going to have to lean on your run game. Even though you have one of the most dynamic and explosive players in the country and Marvin Harrison Jr. on the outside, you definitely need to get the ball going in between the tackles to free up MHJ out on the outside so he can make those outstanding plays. Not running him on jet sweeps where he can get crunched by a linebacker, attacking the line of scrimmage. Because let's be clear about this. Michigan will attack the line of scrimmage. That is what their team is based on both sides of the ball. Yeah, their Michigan's offensive line actually has up to 7 draft picks, when they have 5 positions, if you're not looking at a jumbo package. So when you're looking at having, total control, that's what Michigan does. So it's going to be up to Ohio State to, break the shell, because otherwise they will be squeezed into submission and it's not going to be pretty at that point. And I'm not saying that Ohio State has a, chump defense either. They're number 3 in total defense. They're number 2 in points allowed, and they have forced some turnovers, not near as many as Michigan has, but that's where the ebb and flow of this game is going to be. This is such a huge contest, because you have similar defenses and you have somewhat similar offenses, but they go about it in 2 different ways. Michigan is going to pound you into submission between the hash marks. Ohio State's going to just fly over you on the outside, getting some space and taking it back and forth. Overall, I think this game is going to come down to the fourth quarter, probably the start of the fourth quarter, before one of these teams really starts to take control and separate themselves. In my opinion, I've been clear in saying that Michigan is the better team all year, but at this point, especially with Trevion Henderson playing the way he is, I think Ohio State is going to come out with the victory on this. What do you think, David?
No, I agree. I think wait, did you say Ohio State is going to come out with the victory?
Yep.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No,
I disagree. I think Michigan is going to win. I think even with Harbaugh's suspension, I think Michigan is still the better team. And I think it's gotten mental now. I think it's gotten to a point where Michigan has gotten into Ohio State's heads mentally, much like Ohio State was in Michigan's head mentally for like the past 10, 11, 12 years before Michigan finally broke through and won 2 in a row against them. But Ed, let me ask you this, okay?
Yeah.
If Ryan Day loses, not necessarily loses a 3rd straight game to Michigan, although obviously it would be a 3rd straight, loss to Michigan. But
right.
If Ryan Day does suffer this loss, he would obviously lose to an interim coach. I'm not asking if you think he should be fired, but do you think there's a strong possibility that he will be fired? Because losing to Michigan is already unacceptable enough. Losing to Michigan when they have an interim coach, like, you're just on thin ice there.
I think it definitely notes a conversation as to what the true direction of the program is. Because if Ryan Day cannot get over Sharon Moore as the head coach, that is a point where the Michigan players, they are on a mission with a purpose, because they are backing Jim Harbaugh 150%. The problem with that is you can only play with so much purpose before you burn yourself out emotionally, and then you start losing what got you there. Well, that's where, with this being such a close matchup, Ohio State, I think, comes out ahead because Ryan Day has been the head coach. He is there, and he's seen and had to adjust to game time situations that Sharon Moore just has not had to do. as an offensive coordinator. So if Ohio State loses, it's a conversation for sure. I don't know if it happens because I really think that they're going to want to see what happens with Jim Harbaugh after the season. If Jim Harbaugh is going to sign a contract to stay at Michigan, or if he's going to move on because of the ongoing issues that he's having with the NCAA.
Okay. What do you think, Matthew?
Yeah, I actually agree with Ed here, and I've been saying it. I do think Ohio State is going to win this game, and it's not me saying they're the better team. I just think that going into this matchup, they have more to lose, and that could be scary to play against a team like that. And with his point of running the ball, and I think this is a great coaching plan, but at the same time, if we're thinking about it, so are they. But when you have a generational talent like Marvin Harrison Jr. out there, all eyes, of course, are going to be on him every single play he's out there. But by doing so, especially if you have safety help up top, that opens up the middle of the field for who? Cade Stover. And if you've been watching any sports show this last week, you've heard his name, and rightfully so, because that is going to open up the middle of the field. And at the same time, it's also going to open up the run game. And if they are running it with Travion Henderson and those linebackers are getting closer and closer because of that, it's still going to open up the center of the field for Cade Stover. And then eventually, you already know Marvin Harrison is going to get his licks in. He is going to get those catches. It's just only a matter of when will it happen. So, I mean, we saw it last year in the playoff game against Georgia. When they needed him the most, he came through. Unfortunately, he did get a concussion, and it's all should, coulda, woulda, but what could have happened if he was in the game still? He is just that much of a dynamite out there.
And one more thing that I wanted to bring up is the explosiveness of the Ohio State offense. They could get out early and get a couple scores up. Michigan has not shown themselves to be a comeback team because they've been so dominant. At this point, J.J. McCarthy's only attempted 8 passes against top 25 teams. That is a ridiculously low number, but why burn him if your running backs, Corum and Edwards, are toting the rock? So they have not had to play that comeback style of game. I know last year, Ryan Day tried to, force J.J. McCarthy to beat him, and he passed that test with flying colors. But this is a different year. This is a different offense that Michigan's bringing into this game, and they really need to Michigan needs to be at least even or ahead for J.J. McCarthy's, non-usage to become a factor. Now that we've talked about the game, what's going on the West Coast there?
Yes, this is a big one for me as a Duck fan. This one hits close to home, and I don't care what society has to say. It is the Civil War. And yes, if you don't know what I'm talking about, that is Oregon State and Oregon. It is just been one of those rivalries that, believe it or not, has been around for a while. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and when I told him that this dates back to 1894, he was like, I didn't even know they were states back then. I mean, that's how far it dates back, and a lot of people just don't know. But this series, this rivalry is big to us as a Duck fan, just as it is if you are a Beaver fan. You hate each other's guts. You do. It's just you bleed orange or you bleed green, even though Oregon has like 1,000 different colors sometimes. But that's a discussion for another day. But yes, there has been a rivalry since 1894, and they have actually met more times than Ohio State and Michigan has. And Oregon actually does hold the record, even though both schools happen to say a different record. It's only within a game, but Oregon holds the record with 66 wins, 51 losses, and 10 ties. But there's the thing about this game is every time it's played, you feel as if it's a 0-0 record, and it's the first time they're playing each other, because it's kind of having like that chip on your shoulder, but it's an even playing ground. You're playing for bragging rights till the next year, but it's that 0-0 record, that you're going out there and you're wanting to smash the other guy's head off. Honestly, that's just how it is. And you see it every year. Every single year you see it, and they're just like any other rivalry. There's always controversies. I mean, there was one of the biggest controversies in our rivalry was the famous burning of the shirt incident on the field, and it caused damage. But it's just one of those that you hate each other's guts. You do. I mean, you respect each other. That the fact that you're out there, you're on that field, it's a war. It's the Civil War. But I enjoy it every year because of what it brings and the rich history that it has. Like I said, dating back to 1894. But my blood starts going. It's boiling over. I can't wait for Friday to come, because that's how it is I've got Thanksgiving, I've got food and football that day, but the next day it's Civil War time in my household. So I can't wait. And David, how do you feel when it comes to this rivalry game?
Well, I know fans expect a good game, and it very well could be a good game. Okay. But I think Oregon is going to, kill Oregon State. I think, Oregon's on a mission. You guys haven't made the playoff. I think you made the playoffs just once in 2014, and you haven't made it since. And Dan Lanning has you guys so close. That's no disrespect to Oregon State. I mean, Jonathan Smith has built up an amazing team there, so shout out to him. But I think Oregon is going to be too motivated. But since we are talking about Oregon and in Oregon State, Matthew, let me ask you this. You probably know, but how do you feel about running back Bucky Irving not being a semifinalist for the Doak Walker Award for the best running back?
It is tough, and he has dealt with some injuries this year, but you have to keep in mind, when we started this year, we had a three-headed monster when it came to him, Jordan James, and Noah Whittington. Noah Whittington did get hurt, so it did get narrowed down to him and Jordan James, but they share that load. They are a nice dynamite 1-2 punch. It is tough that he is not a semifinalist, but his game, it shows it. His resume shows it. He is a very small back if you see him, but you would not guess that when you watch him play. He is very run heavy, and he is a hard guy to tackle. But at the end of the day, I'm not really interested on awards unless it is a championship, and I guarantee you every single person on that Oregon Ducks roster will say the same. Of course, they want to rally around Bo Nix and win him that Heisman, but that's not their priority. Their priority is to make it to the playoffs and to win a championship. And that's what I love about them. Yes, they put up the Be Bodacious posters. That was at the beginning of the year, just reminiscence of Joey Harrington. But if you've watched their game of play this year, it is that noise is going to be out there. And here we want to win a championship. And just like Ed said earlier in the show, there are a lot of games this week that are going to be playing a lot of implications on this playoff race. And this is one of them. Or this isn't a walk in the park with Oregon. Oregon State will always have Oregon's number because of we play them every year. This is a rivalry. But Oregon State is not an easy team to play. They are very tough. They know how to stuff the run. They've proved it all year that they know how to stuff the run. And they have a great offense themselves. And speaking of running game, I've said it since our very show when we were Coast to Coast Sports. Damian Martinez is actually one of my favorite running backs to watch in all of college football. And that is coming from a Ducks fan. That is our rival right there. But that's how much respect I have from him. He is a true sophomore, but when you watch him play, you would think he is a veteran senior out there. Every time I watch him, I say that's Arian Foster 2.0. And that is a very extreme, highly comp when it comes to that. Arian Foster was an amazing talent in the NFL for the Houston Texans. But that's what I see when I see Damian Martinez run every game, and I think that it's going to be a close game. I do think Oregon is the better team, but it doesn't matter because it's rivalry week. But yes, a win here helps Oregon and propels them, but it's not going to matter until they play Washington in the Pac-12 championship game, and that will decide the number 4 spot or the number 3 spot in the college football playoffs.
And something else too, with Oregon, they're second in the country in points per game. Like their offense is second in the country in points per game, which is what you expect from Oregon. But Ed, what's really crazy too? Oregon has an excellent defense too. Like Dan Lanning, it has literally built an SEC team up there. Like you're not used to Oregon being that sort of physical, in your face kind of team. They're more of that speedy, finesse kind of team that always kind of chokes against better opponents. No offense, Matthew. But yeah, Dan Lanning he's really kind of built an SEC team up there with the defense that he's put together along with Oregon's offense.
Yeah, and when Dan Lanning was asked about some of these SEC style or SEC location schools that are going to be coming open over the next, currently open now, A&M or Mississippi State, people were asking Dan Lanning what his idea about being in Oregon was. He's like, why would I want to go there? I'm building something here that's fantastic. And if you don't think Nike has money to pay me when it comes time to do a contract, you are sorely mistaken. Nike has all the money in the world, and they funnel all that money into the Oregon football program. So, yes, they are building the SEC team, SEC West, if you will, coastal, if you will. And they can basically pick and choose the players up and down California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, everything that what is Pac-12 or will used to be Pac-12 as he continues to build that program going forward.
Yeah, and who wouldn't want to be the first coach to win a championship for Oregon? You will be a legend if and when that happens. And just as David has said many times on our show, he sees Dan Lanning being that guy. And I have to say, I see that as well. Why would you want to leave Oregon? I especially with what he's building there, I'll tell you what, it is special. And I think that he can have a championship easily if he continues to do this and go down this path. So
yeah, and if you remember, like literally the very first show of Coast to Coast Sports, I said that Oregon has far and away the best chance to win a championship of all the programs that haven't won a championship yet. Okay. They have the resources. They have the facilities. They're usually always top notch in recruiting. They pretty much have everything you could ask for except for that championship win.
Yeah, that it factor. And I think Dan Lanning is that it factor. It doesn't have to always be a player. They will get a player that has that. But I think as a head coach, he has that it factor that I love seeing. Yes, I'm not always a fan of the 4th down going for it, the 2-point conversion, stuff like that, especially if points are there, easy to take. But I know it sounds contradictory, but I love his aggressiveness. But because he doesn't change, not in a bad way. He tells you, this is who I am, and I'm not going to change because I truly feel that we are going to do this. We are a great team, and I trust my guys. And if you see a coach show trust in his players, you've won that team. That team wants to not only win for you, they want to win for themselves. They want to win for the city of Eugene. It's just, and for the university. But there's also another rivalry game this week that is one of our teams here. I just talked about mine. So, Ed, let's talk about yours. Texas Tech, Texas.
Alrighty. So this is a game that just scares every Texas fan every year because anytime Texas has been on the precipice of doing something great, Texas Tech has come to town and just killed our hopes and dreams all over the place. I look at 2002 when Mike Leach runs a trick play and beats Texas and knocks us out of the BCS contention. I look at 2009 when I still have nightmares about Michael Crabtree, catching that pass and not getting pushed out of bounds. And and he goes up the sideline on the final play of the game to beat Texas. But those games were in Lubbock. That game was in Lubbock. Guess what? This game is in Austin. We're not worried about that being in Austin. And we have a special guest in the crowd too. Brett Yormark is going to be in the crowd, and I just can't wait for the SEC chant to take over that stadium. It's going to be just electric there. But as far as the game goes, everything on paper is going to tell you that Texas should dominate this game from start to finish. And that has been, the way that it's been for a very long time. But for some reason, Texas Tech just has that voodoo magic that, gives Texas, no matter who the coach is, whether it be Charlie Strong, whether it be Mac Brown, whether it be Steve Sarkisian, there's something about this game that is just weird and wonky to the Texas program. And it's a good look for Texas Tech to be able to stand toe-to-toe against the athletes, the 5-star athletes with 5-star culture, as was talked about last week, for Texas Tech to be able to stand toe-to-toe with Texas. And I feel like they still will, because Texas Tech is a place where you're going to get those players that weren't exactly recruited by Texas, and they have a chip on their shoulder about Texas for not recruiting them. So they're trying to exact revenge for not getting picked up. But one of those players that has really blossomed this year for Texas Tech is Taj Brooks. He's got over 1,300 yards. He is the backbone of this offense, especially with the injury issues that Texas Tech has had over the year. They started the season with Tyler Show, and he's already in the transfer portal now because he got hurt. He's not getting his job back. So Baron Morton is taken over and done an admirable job. They have won the last few weeks, just doing the little things. This is not a team that's built to beat you 59-54 anymore. This is a team that can beat you 17-14, as they proved a couple of weeks ago against Kansas. And in the end, our defense, at Texas defense is, number 37th in the country against an offense that does not have the hosses to keep up with the monsters that are in the front seven for Texas. So, like I said, on paper, Texas Tech should be dominated through this game, but with everything on the line that Texas has to go through and the pressure that they're having to go through to stay perfect, they will be perfect, as Coach Boone would say. There's a good chance that Texas Tech will keep this really close for a very long time, and I would not be surprised if it comes down to that fourth quarter, the last half of the fourth quarter, before Texas can solidify the win, as opposed to what they did in Iowa in Ames last week. So I'm putting this at somewhere around a 38-27 type game. But what do you think, David?
I mean, I think Texas is going to beat Texas Tech, but I would not be surprised one bit if Texas Tech came out on top, because I've talked about this on the show before, that Texas lately has just been skating by teams. They haven't really been putting teams away like other teams in the top 10 have. Now, you might argue that maybe Texas is due to finally have that game where they just impose their will and they just, run away with it. But we've only seen that from you guys like a couple or a few times this year. And I think Texas Tech is a very well-coached team. I know I think they're 6-5 or something like that. But don't be fooled by the record. I think that Joey McGuire is an excellent coach, and he is going to have his guys ready. Win or lose, I think this is going to be a close game, Ed. I think ultimately, I think you guys are going to pull through because you have the talent advantage. But I would not be surprised one bit if the way that you guys have been beating teams lately comes back to bite you.
Yeah, I think one of the keys for Texas is early on in the game, you have maybe a 4th and 1 or a 4th and 2, just a 4th and short. Do not be tempted to go for it. Punt the ball or take the points, because I think your defense will be good enough to still stay in the game. But just like Ed said, once that 4th quarter comes around, I do think that Texas will put on the Jets and they will win the game. But don't get caught early. The last thing you need to do is try to fight for that momentum early in the game by going for it on 4th down and not convert. And you just gave all that momentum to Texas Tech, because that's the last thing you want to do. So don't be tempted, Sark. Don't do it. Punt the ball or take the points with the field goal. Just don't go for it.
I was on a Twitter space just last night. And I think David heard me on it.
Dude, I'm sorry. That was a boring Twitter space, man. Like, I thought there was gonna be a lot more fire, man. But I'm like, what the hell is this? There's nothing going on here. Everybody's so nice and friendly. I hate it.
So I was being on that Twitter space. We got to talking about some of these offensive-minded coordinators. These brilliant minds like Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin and Lincoln Riley. They needed to have somebody in their ear going, no, we are not going to go for every 4th down and short. But now that they're the head coach, they don't have somebody in their ear to tell them no. So that can sometimes come back to bite them. And that's just to your point, Matthew, about, don't be tempted. Well, an offensive-minded coach is always going to think that his plan is always going to be better than your defense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's bound to happen. And just like you're saying, and you've seen it with Texas all year, and this is to David's point, that momentum goes to the other team. So it feels like you're having to skate by these lesser opponents simply because they have the momentum, but your team has the talent. So that becomes a difficult dynamic to navigate.
Well, Ed, and I think you make a great point about how a head coach who wants to be aggressive doesn't really have that person to kind of advise them, hey, like, don't do this. But isn't that what you would have an associate head coach for? Someone to kind of I don't know, calm you down, for lack of better terminology.
He's there to tell you, this is a dumb idea, but in the end, it's still the head coach's call.
Yeah, of course.
Yep. I mean, that's just how it's going to be. But I hate to say it, but yes, there have been plays such as that Michael Crabtree. How can you not push him out of bounds or tackle him play? You've had
or Blake Gideon catch that interception before that.
You have, like I said, the pick, Kenny Wheaton, but then you also have the kick six, which if you're a football fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about and where I'm about to go. And
I knew exactly where I was when it happened, man. That was so crazy.
Yeah, it seems like everybody was watching it live, because that's how big of a bowl game, bowl game, this rivalry is. I mean, it is. It's the Iron Bowl. This is Alabama versus Auburn. And, man, they do not like each other. They do not like each other. And when you live in the South, you live and breathe football. But in Alabama, it's just a little bit different. When you are either saying War Eagle or Roll Tide the second you come out of your mama's womb, it's either one or the other. There is no in between. And that's just how indifferent they are there and how much they bump heads when it comes to that. If you've driven anywhere and you've seen license plates, you've seen bumper stickers where it says house divided, and you have Alabama and you have Auburn. I actually have a coworker who has that on his vehicle. I don't know how it works, but his wife, Auburn fan, him, Bama fan. But sometimes they say opposites attract. And I mean, we've seen it. We have a very favorite sports show. It's called Crane and Company, and their main host, he's an Auburn fan. His wife, Bama fan. That they're married. But it does work. But when it comes to this game and this rivalry, they do not like each other. They don't. And it's just become such a pivotal matchup every single year. I guarantee you, every player on that team is circling this game every year, no matter what. And that brings me to my point here is it doesn't matter how bad one team's playing, they always show up when it comes to this game. You can never count them out. More times, it's always been that Auburn team that comes into this game not doing well, just skating by, and you got an Alabama team that's just headed for the playoffs, and Auburn comes in and decides we want to play our best football of the year. That's just how this game is, and I totally expect that this year. Auburn is not in the same playing field as Alabama. Alabama this year, especially, and it's not that Alabama is just overwhelming with talent. It's just Auburn has not really found their pieces. This is Hugh Freeze's first year as head coach there, and I do think he's the right guy. I'm going to say that right now. He still has time. Similar situation as Billy Napier in Florida. But Auburn just does not have the talent this year coming into this game, but it don't matter. They're going to make it close. I'm pretty sure it's a 14.5 spread right now, but don't let that fool you. Auburn will come into this game and they're gonna hold their own. I really think so, because that's how history is always showing it. Alabama does hold the record over them, 49-37-1, but this rivalry, guys, it's always expected and always delivers fireworks. I mean, you guys agree when it comes to that?
I mean, I want to agree. Like, I hope it's a close game just because I want a good game. But this is the same Auburn team that got their asses kicked by, what was it, New Mexico State, 31-10.
Who?
Yeah,
You don't know.
exactly. But when it comes to rivalries, you can just pretty much throw all that, out the window. Matthew, I thought you made a very good point with your team's rivalry with Oregon State, that when it comes to the point, it's pretty much 0-0. And Alabama, Auburn feel the same way. I mean, Alabama is gunning for the playoffs, and Auburn, they're going to make a bowl game, but they would love nothing more than to be the team that officially put an end to Alabama's, playoff hopes. Last year it was LSU who put an end to that. But how satisfying would it be for the arch rival to do that? And if I remember correctly, I think Auburn did put an end to Alabama's playoff hopes back in, what was it, like 2019? Did Alabama lose to Auburn in 2019? Whatever year it was, I know it was recently where Alabama lost to Auburn, and that officially put an end to Alabama's playoff hopes.
Yeah, because
I'm pretty sure it was 2019.
Alabama has a 3-year streak right now running on this game. So they've won 3 in a row. So if you date it back, you're pretty close, right on there. The 2019-2020 season,
Okay.
and Auburn did win it last.
Okay, that's what I remember.
Yeah, so that's exactly how it is. It's unpredictable. I mean, there's a reason. Yes, it's a 14.5 point spread right now because Alabama's just so much better, and they are destined. Not hopefully, but for their hopes, they are destined for the playoffs. But to play spoiler, Auburn wants to be they would love to be spoiler, and I think Ed probably agrees too.
Yeah, War Eagle would love nothing more than to have the Eagle go in, snatch that elephant mascot head off of the guy's uniform, and just beat him with it. That's the kind of hate we're talking about with these two teams. Through this year, Auburn has had some highs. Even though they lost to Georgia, they hung with them, and that was something. There are no moral victories when it comes to a win-loss record, but that was one that they could build on. And Hugh Freeze's first year, this is going to be Hugh Freeze's first year and possibly worst roster going into this game. So Alabama better enjoy it while they can, because Hugh Freeze is coming for them. It may not be this year, but crazier things have happened, especially in this game. Between Bo Nix's the year Bo Nix led Auburn to victory, over Alabama. That was an insane game, top to bottom. Then you mentioned before about the kick six. Yes, I remember exactly where I was as well. I remember standing in the middle of a retail establishment with the TVs on, and oh my goodness, everybody did, all the customers, all the employees, everybody that could see it, or like, what just happened? That, I feel like that is a statement that is said during this game specifically
I had
more
never seen
often than
anything like
almost
it.
every other rivalry in college football.
Yeah, I had never seen anything like it before.
Yeah, it just seems so almost premeditated, just how things were going, the timeout call, the play that happened beforehand. I mean, it was just like everything was leading up to that to happen. And when it happened, I'll tell you what, unless you were down there in Tuscaloosa, you were cheering your butts off because Alabama's, one of those teams that everyone just loves to hate because they've been dominant for so long, a lot like the New England Patriots in the NFL. And you were cheering, you were going crazy. That's exactly what I did in my living room. I was going crazy as that happened, and I'm just looking. I'm like waiting for there to be a flag. I'm like, this is it, there's going to be a flag somewhere, a legal block in the back, blindside block, something. There wasn't, and it was just pandemonium, and rightfully so, because if a game like that against your biggest rival, who you hate their stinking guts, and you're playing at home, and that happens, you're on cloud nine, and that's exactly what happened there. But you know who also may be on cloud nine if they pull off the upset this week and become bowl eligible? That's the Florida Gators. David, take us through that.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned Crane. You mentioned Crane and Company, and listening to it, I thought our guy Jake Crane made some excellent points about the rivalry between Auburn and Alabama. That like there's a sibling connection there. There's a brotherly and a sisterly connection there, because these are people that grew up with each other. These are people that played on the same team as each other. They go to church with each other. They're coworkers. They grew up as friends. Well, guys, it's pretty much the exact same way with Florida State. Okay, wherever you are in the state of Florida, like I can tell you, I was born in 1994, and growing up, you were either Florida or you were Florida State. And then some people, were Miami fans, but they're irrelevant. We don't really talk about those people. But you were either Florida State. And in fact, Matthew, if you remember, I said that I became a Florida fan because of my brother. He started off as an FSU fan, and I became a Florida fan to spite him. And it's funny, he's actually sitting on the couch right next to me. So that's kind of funny. But no, like the point is that we're rivals, but we're also family, and we're friends, at least until that uber important day, and that is the day that we finally play each other for state bragging rights. All right. I talk about before how Alabama is fighting for a playoff spot, and Auburn is hoping to put an end to Alabama's playoff hopes. It's not exactly the same thing with Florida, because even if we beat FSU, FSU will go into the ACC championship, and if they win that one, they might still get in. But we are fighting for bowl eligibility, and I really truly feel like we are more desperate for bowl eligibility than FSU is for a playoff spot. And this is an interesting game because both of our backups are in. So Max Brown for UF and Tate Rodemaker for FSU. So Brown against Missouri threw for 56 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions on 4 of 5 passing, and he also had a fumble and was sacked. Rodemaker, meanwhile, against North Alabama, threw for 217 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions on 13 of 23 passing. So Rodemaker in general had better stats, but he also played North freaking Alabama. And then Max Brown was up against a top 10 Missouri team. Okay. But even beyond that, it should be noted that Rodemaker in general has more experience as far as playing time and stats go. He has more experience than Max Brown. So I think the way that I see it, I think because both teams are down to their second string quarterbacks, I think both teams will rely on their running games more. Florida, we have a two-headed monster with Trevor Etienne and Montreal Johnson. The stats are fairly even. I mean, so much so that both of them literally have 710 yards on the ground. Now, in my opinion, Trevor Etienne has been the better back. I think he's shiftier, and I think he does a better job at running in between the tackles. But Montreal Johnson is no slouch. With FSU, it's a little different because they've been kind of more reliant on one man, and that one man is Trey Benson, who has really carried the bulk of the load for FSU's runners. He's got 743 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns. The next closest guy for FSU has got just over 300 yards and only 3 touchdowns. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like Trey Benson has been very, very underrated. And I think part of that is because he doesn't have 1,000 rushing yards. But I think, I think another part, and arguably a bigger part, is that I think running backs in general have been underrated because it has been the quarterback show all season long. I mean, when you got guys like Jordan Travis of FSU, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Jaden Daniels, is it any wonder why the running backs are barely being talked about? But make no mistake, Trey Benson is a monster, and he is hard to be like. It is hard to bring him down. Florida would know after the way that he went off against us last year, but take that with a grain of salt. We can't really tackle anybody. And speaking of the team's defenses, I mean, what can we say? What can I say about Florida other than the fact that we have a garbage ass defense? Like, we are just so bad at everything. We can't tackle anymore. We have breakdowns in coverages. We can't even cover guys freaking number one receivers. Like, and then meanwhile, Florida State's defense is so much better. They're 12th in scoring defense at 16.9 points per game. But here's a catch, guys, okay? FSU has a great overall defense, but they're actually 41st in rushing defense. They're allowing 139.3 yards per game. Before I talk about Trevor Etienne and Montreal Johnson of Florida, well, in our last 2 games, we are averaging 219 yards on the ground, and we've rushed for 6 touchdowns. Yes, one of those games came against LSU's trash defense, so take that with a grain of salt, okay? But overall, the running game for Florida has come alive. So is FSU going to win? I should say yes, and I know I'm being a homer here, okay? But keep in mind, we almost beat FSU last year, okay? We were tied 38-38, and then FSU scored a last-minute touchdown. But the game is going to be in the Swamp, and that place is rocking. Like, if you've never been to the Swamp, go and you'll know what I'm talking about. And my final prediction, I'm going to say that Florida pulls ahead 31-28. I think that Trey Smack is going to smack a field goal, and he's going to get us a bowl game. But Ed, what do you think, man?
I think that's all well and good, but you can't make me go to Fantasyland. Florida State is going to win this game, and I'll give you one name, and it's Keon Coleman. He is not going to let FSU not get over that hump. You're right. Florida does have a defense. They're there. I don't know how well they actually do. Especially when they're dealing with a team that they know that their back is against the wall. They know that without the leader of their team, can they put it all together? So that's the biggest question. So will Florida State put it together enough to beat Florida and go into the ACC championship game, which they've already clinched, still undefeated, to make that game, that ACC championship game, just a collision course with Louisville? That is what I'm more looking for. Florida State and Florida, Yes, I completely agree with you. In the 90s, that was a huge rivalry, even into the early 2000s. But it's been kind of back and forth as far as who's good, who's not good. You're not okay, I'm not okay, but you're okay, and I'm okay, and that's okay. That kind of thing, between Florida teams. And but for this week and this week only, Florida State is going to beat Florida, and it's not going to be in the same vernacular that you're saying, David. I know you really want Florida to win, but to be honest, I'm seeing it be more like 31 to 16.
I do think David is right that this game does mean more to Florida because it would make them bowl eligible. I think when their backs against the walls, it can be scary and tough. But I have to agree with Ed on this one. I just think that Florida State is the better team. I know they have their backup just as you guys do, but at the end of the day, I really don't think it's going to matter. I think Florida State just has the key pieces to win that game with Trey Benson, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson's healthy. It's just going to be, I feel like, lights out for that Florida team. But I've seen stranger things happen, and I'm not talking about the Netflix show. It can happen. And would I be surprised if Florida happened to win? No, because it is rivalry week after all. Anything can happen. But I think when you look at it on paper, I just have to go with Florida State winning this game. But we will see what happens. Like I said, anything can happen. But I am interested, though, to see who's on Street's Corner this week.
Well, fellas, there's a guy by the name of Mark Ryan, who is a Florida fan. He actually does media work for Clemson, but he is a Florida alum and a Florida fan, and he will tweet about Florida. And he asked this question that just, like, when I first saw it, I was like, what, are you serious right now? And let me pull up the tweet right now, okay? So he asks, if you're Billy Napier, do you give DJ Lagway the authority to tell you if he's okay with Mertz coming back? Hashtag Gators. Like, and of course he'll deflect by saying, "Oh, I'm just asking questions, bro." Well, bro, it's a stupid ass question, okay? Because if you think that the head coach of a college football team is going to let a 17 or 18-year-old kid come in and dictate the program, you're an idiot, point blank, all right? This isn't the NFL. The players don't run the show. Even with NIL, okay, the players don't run the show. And Billy is not going to let a true freshman run the program. Not even a true freshman with 5 stars, okay? And DJ Lagway is a stud, okay? He is a freaking stud. The numbers that he has put up in Texas are astronomical. He has 5 stars for a reason. But at the end of the day, he is still going to be a true freshman coming in, okay? And high school competition and college competition are vastly different. Much like how, college competition and pro competition are different, right? And why would you want to throw Lagway into the fire right away? Don't you want him to develop? And that's the thing. Like, not every true freshman quarterback is going to be Trevor Lawrence, okay? And in fact, more often than not, quarterbacks who come in, even the 5-star ones, they ride the bench for a year for development. We've seen it with Tim Tebow, Quinn Ewers, Bryce Young. All those guys were 5-star recruits. None of them started, their first year. And I just get so sick and tired of people just getting so enamored with this 5-star stuff, right? Like, especially with, Tennessee fans who were like, "Oh, Nico should have started all along. Like, Joe Milton sucks." Okay, you need to let that 5-star shit go. Okay, it doesn't mean a damn thing. All right, because like I said, they are coming into a new environment. Okay, they dominated high school. That's great, but high school is not the same thing. All right, and just how disrespectful do you have to be to Graham Mertz, right? Who put up 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on well over 70% passing. And if he comes back, and I really hope he comes back, okay? Because not only has he put up excellent numbers for us, but he has fought his ass off for us, okay? Especially with all the hate that he was getting all off season. You know, getting it from rival trolls, that's one thing. But you had Gator fans just they were determined that he was going to suck. They refused to give him a chance, okay? And Graham Mertz shut them the hell up, all right? So I really hope he comes back. And isn't that what you want? Have Graham Mertz come back, and naturally you would expect him to, get better. I mean, yes, Mertz won't play this Saturday because of an injury, but I think he'll be back. He should make a quick recovery. But naturally he should get better. Let him take DJ Lagway under his wing, okay, and let Lagway grow under him, because isn't it so much better if Lagway takes a year or two to develop rather than just kind of throwing him into the wolves? And then what if he sucks? And then you hinder his development. And then if that happens, the questions are going to be even louder for Napier. Okay. And Mark Ryan, I don't know if you watch the show, but if you do, okay. I don't want to hear that. Oh, I'm just asking questions, bro. No, you are doing this because you hate Billy Napier. Okay. You do. I'm not saying you hate him as a person, no, but clearly you hate him as a head coach. And how do I know that? Well, let me pull up another tweet here, okay? If my phone can just cooperate with me. Literally 2 days before he asked that asinine question, okay? He says, and this is about the Missouri game, by the way, okay? Florida's chances to win this game on 4th and 17 just now, 99.9%. Napier is not the guy. And then he says other things, but we don't need to get into that, okay? And then, I kind of wrote a long tweet, and I'll just summarize the tweet. And I said that you acknowledge the 4th and 17 debacle, okay, which is the defense's fault, something that Billy Napier has no control over whatsoever, and yet you still proceed to blame him, okay? Just, guys, most of my blocks on Twitter have been Florida fans, man, because they are just some of the most ignorant, insufferable idiots in college football. Like, it physically hurts me how stupid some of these people are, man. They don't know anything, okay? They want to fire Billy every chance they get, okay? They don't believe in patience, all right? Even after Billy made it very clear that this was going to be a rebuilding project, like, oh yeah, we're all for Billy, and then the second something goes wrong, fire Billy, fire them right away, okay? That method is not going to work if firing coaches every 3 to 4 years, okay? It's not going to work. I'm digressing a little bit here. Let me get back to the point, okay? DJ Lagway is not going to start over Graham Mertz, okay? And Lagway does not have that attitude to demand to start, okay? Because this kid is humble as all get out, okay? And I absolutely love that he's coming to Florida, and I love that he loves that he's coming to Florida. He has a heart of gold. He's a wonderful human being, and he is a stud at the quarterback position, okay? But yeah, man, you are insane if you think that a true freshman, even one with 5 stars, is going to run the program, okay? That is not going to happen at all. And that's the Streets Corner.
Yeah, you're not guaranteed anything just from coming from another level up. And we've seen that actually with the NFL. Baker Mayfield was drafted number 1 overall to the Cleveland Browns. He was not the starting quarterback day one, just because he was the number 1 overall pick. Same thing applies for DJ Lagway. You have Graham Mertz there, who has been the starter this year, and he has put up good numbers. Graham Mertz has, and I do think he will get better. I don't think that Graham Mertz will be elite, but I think that he will be a good guy to, kind of extend his wing out and show him the ropes, because you are coming to a different level. Not only that, you're coming to the SEC, which everyone knows the SEC is one of the, if not the toughest conferences in all of college football. So you were a stud at high school. That's great. But now we're at college. You were a stud at college. That's great. Now we're at the pros. There are just different levels to it. And to even ask a question like that, I do feel is ignorant, but I think it's also a dig at Billy Napier, because it's almost like you're not really trusting Billy Napier's head coaching abilities. And I think that you have to give it time, because that's just the right thing to do, is to give Napier some times. Like I've said before in previous episodes, fans can be the worst things out there, because one day they will say this, the next day they will say the complete opposite because they won a game or something like that. They're constantly, changing their minds, but it's just not fair to have him start, because not everyone, just like to your point, is a Trevor Lawrence or even a Bo Nix. I'll throw him in that category. He was legacy. That could be why he started day one. But he beat Oregon. I will say that, his first game. But it's not everyone is like that. And I don't think that he's coming to a situation that has that door open. Graham Mertz is the starting quarterback, and he will be the starting quarterback going into next year, rightfully so. So I get your frustration, I really do. And fans, they could just be the worst part. They could actually take so much out of you, and those are your own fan bases. It could get so frustrating and so toxic because of that. They are absolutely entitled to their opinion, just as we are. But their opinion to me just seems, plain ignorant, just as you're saying as well.
Let me tell you, like, other than maybe Auburn fans, there's not a more toxic fan base on Twitter than Florida fans, man. It is just so crazy. But Ed, do you got any thoughts on my rant?
Well, fan is short for fanatical. And, if there was ever a word that described Florida fans and Auburn fans and Texas fans and Oklahoma fans and USC fans and Oregon fans, it's fanatical. The 365 days a year revolves around what they want to have happen in their program, not necessarily what is going to happen in their program. Because every fanatical fan wants 100-0 shutout in every game, no matter who you're playing. 1,000 wins in a row. I mean, the only fan base that is even close to getting that right now is Georgia, and even they have their times where they're like, well, we're not winning by enough, so he's not doing his job.
Oh, dude, I'm pretty sure Kirby Smart got grilled by some Georgia fans for rehiring Mike Bobo as the offensive coordinator.
Oh yeah, I mean, every decision that you make in that program is going to come under scrutiny, and if you do not have the backbone to just handle it or let it go, then you don't need that job. One of the things about being a fan is fans can be soft. They are not in the program. They are not the ones in the coaching room. They are not the ones in the workout room. They are not the ones in the practices seeing everything. So they can say whatever they want, but it has nothing to do with what the program is actually going to do. And if you're going to follow that program as astutely as you're talking about, then you need to accept what they're going to do. You can have your opinions, but don't sit there and say that this has to happen this way, for the program to go through, because nobody sees it, in your household. They only see it in that administrative building, in the gym, on the field, and just moving forward from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. I think both of you guys make great points.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail right on the head, Ed. You need to have a backbone. But you know what else you need on this Thanksgiving Day? Is that wishbone. You're over here breaking it. You're making a wish, and you know who's making that wish? The Green Bay Packers, that they beat the Detroit Lions. Ed, you're our Packers fan. Is that wish going to come true?
Well, if anybody that didn't see it before, that is a cheesehead sitting in the background over here.
Oh, I just noticed it. I didn't even notice it before.
So yes, Green Bay and Detroit are going to get us kicked off on Turkey Day, with the early game. And as it stands, the Packers lead this rivalry 105-76-7. But this is not your grandfather's, your dad's, your grandfather's, maybe even your great-grandfather's Packers Lions matchup here, because right now the Lions are 8-2 going into this game. You know, the last time that they were 8-2 going into a game was 61 years ago.
Oh,
You know, and they playing the Packers. They played the Packers on Thanksgiving that same year as well. You know what else happened on that week of 61 years ago?
Landed
Just
on
for
the,
historical context,
landed on the moon.
no. It was the end of the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was 1962.
Oh man.
So that is a phenomenal time frame for these Lions fans that have been clamoring for this. Green Bay, we've had 30 good years. I can't complain too much about that. But a couple things going into this game. The Packers really are the walking wounded. They have 17 players listed on the injury list that are either going to play, doubtful, questionable, that whole gambit right there. You know how many Detroit has? They have 4. That's a huge advantage to Dan Campbell's group. You know, this is the group that has one of the best offensive lines in the NFL versus the youngest offense in the NFL. The average age of the Packers offense is less than 26 years old. That is insane to me, considering how many years that we've had these grizzled veteran quarterbacks, you know, and their offensive weapons, you know, and the offensive line. You know, we're in a youth movement as a Packers team. The Lions, they've been moving toward where they're at now, which is second in the NFC conference for 3 years now. You know, they're finally there. You know, they're looking to see if they can jockey for position right now with the Eagles. Eagles winning a few days ago, that kind of puts a kibosh on it for this week, but the Lions are still coming. And when you're looking at the quarterback play between these two, Jordan Love, he's been learning for the past 3 years under Aaron Rodgers. He's still got young players, so he's learned the position, but he hasn't learned how to bring along those receivers, and that's going to rear its ugly head against the Lions defense. With Jared Goff, you know, because him being traded to Detroit was the catalyst of this whole run Detroit is on right now. They are comfortable together. You know, a comfortable offense is a productive offense. And one stat that I saw as I was going through was in the last couple of years, Jared Goff has only tied Tom Brady. I know Tom hasn't played this year, but 7 passing touchdowns in the final 4 minutes of regulation of over the past 2 years. That is a offense that doesn't panic. You know, when you panic, you make mistakes and you don't get down the field like you're supposed to. They are comfortable. They are smooth. And with the sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown, running around out there as a Swiss Army knife, they've got a lot of ways to attack you. Jahmyr Gibbs being added to the running back room this year has just made a dynamic run with David Montgomery, you know, just kind of passing the torch back and forth between those two guys. So in the end, you know, I am expecting the Packers to lose. We're 4-6 now. You know, there's a good chance we'll be 4-7, but I still am hopeful, you know, and thankful for the Packers playing on Thanksgiving Day. So, you know, I can watch them with no interruption whatsoever. But Matthew, what are you thinking on that game?
Well, it's just crazy how times have changed. And I'm going to say this actually just in a year span. In a year span, the Lions have got rid of TJ Hawkinson, who is probably a top 5 tight end in the NFL. DeAndre or Swift, he's gone. Jamal Williams. And yet here they are, a top tied for first in the entire NFC. I mean, we have seen just an amazing turnaround with this Detroit Lions team. And I'll tell you what, Dan Campbell, I just like him more and more every time I watch him coaching. There's just something about him, and the fact that he was linked to this Texas A&M job. Who the hell threw his name out there? That's one of the biggest rumors I've ever heard, because there's no way he is stepping down from an NFL job that he's actually doing pretty darn good at right now. So to see the Detroit Lions be there at a top of the whole NFC is amazing. Jordan Love and this Packers team, although they are young, I have seen a lot of improvement in Jordan Love's game. And you as a Packers fan, I know you pay very close attention to that. But I just think that this Detroit Lions team, with all that they have there from Amon-Ra St. Brown, J-Mo, and Jahmyr Gibbs at running back, it's going to be too tough for them. And Aiden Hutchinson, gosh, man, tell you what, it's going to be Jacksonville's going to regret not drafting him. That's all I got to say, because he is a problem. And that position itself in the NFL is a problem when you have the likes of him, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. I mean, the list keeps going on. That position in the NFL is become one of the top positions on defense. So Aiden Hutchinson, gosh, he's a stud. And that offensive line, Penei Sewell, Oregon alumni right there. It's just going to be too much, I think, for the Packers to handle. But I do like what I'm seeing in Jordan Love. He still has a lot to improve his game on, but I like where he's going. And the Packers, they're just rebuilding right now. And it's weird to say that, because the Packers have been around and so relevant for a long time that it is weird to say that, and to say that the Lions are a good team. So I do have the Lions winning this game.
And Aiden Hutchinson is practically a hometown hero. I don't think he was born in Detroit, but he was born in Michigan. And let me just add something too, that I don't think I've ever been more wrong about a quarterback than I have been about Jared Goff, because I was convinced that Jared Goff was a system quarterback under McVay, and I thought he was going to fail at Detroit, and I was dead wrong. If anything, you could argue that he's doing even better with Detroit than he has done with the Rams. Yes, I know he took the Rams to a Super Bowl only to, put up 3 points against the Patriots, but you can tell that he has a long-term future with the Lions. So kudos to Jared Goff, man. Like I said, I did not expect him to be arguably even better after leaving the Rams. So it's just incredible from him.
And it also goes to show, how being in the right system matters in the NFL. Being with the right offensive coordinators, being with the right head coach matters, because with McVay, Jared Goff, he was good, but I don't think he was the best fit for McVay's offense. So you get him out of there, you get him into Detroit, and at some point you see the light bulb turn on. The light bulb doesn't always turn on in high school and everybody sees you're a 5-star recruit. It doesn't turn on when you're in college and you're a number 1 draft pick. Well, Jared Goff was a number 1 draft pick, but in the NFL, it's a completely different game than it was in college. So it may take a little time before you get it, at the NFL level. And I think here in Detroit, he's got it. He understands what's going on around him. He's not just working the offense as he's been told. He's actually, working the offense as he sees it, which is a completely different ball of wax.
Yeah, he's controlling that offense. They're giving him free reins to do so, and you're able to see what he's able to do and capable of. So I think it's a great fit there for him in Detroit, and I'm interested to see how they do the rest of this year. But as I said earlier in the show, there's 3 games on Thanksgiving, and that's just the first one. To cover the second game, David, why don't you go ahead and cover that?
So the next game we've got is the Washington Commanders and the Dallas Cowboys. So the Commanders will be at Dallas. And look, I've talked about the Commanders before. Their quarterback Sam Howell, he's put up some pretty decent passing numbers. He also has to clean up the turnovers. But for a guy who's this is his first year as a starter, he's been pretty decent. And of course, Washington has been horrible on defense. But guys, I mean, I almost don't want to do a preview here because I feel like you can just pencil this in as a Cowboys win, and I'll explain later. But let me just say something about the Cowboys. And I have a cousin here who listens to the show. Okay, so you know who you are. Okay, just I say this because you need to hear the truth. Okay. If I hated you, I would tell you lies, and you need to hear the truth. Okay. The Dallas Cowboys are the biggest frauds in the NFL. All right. On the surface, they look fantastic. They're 7-3 overall. They're tied with the Baltimore Ravens for the best point differential at, plus 127. And their average winning score is 36-11. They have been straight up obliterating teams. Other than one close win, close 20-17 victory, I don't remember who they played, but they had one close victory. Other than that, all of their other wins have been by 20 points or more. Okay. So you're wondering, why do I think they're the biggest frauds in the NFL? Well, let's crunch the numbers down a little bit. Okay. You want to hear the record of the opponents that the Cowboys have beaten? 18 wins and 43 losses. That is beyond pathetic, okay? And not only that, guys, Dallas has not beaten a team with a winning record. Not one team with a winning record have they beaten, and not only that, every single team with a winning record that they've played, they lost. And the record of the opponents they've lost to, 18-13. And by the way, that 18-13 overall record is brought down by the 2-9 Cardinals, who just bully the crap out of the Cowboys. But the Eagles and Niners also played the Cowboys, and the Cowboys lost to both. They got their asses kicked by the 49ers, and San Francisco and Philadelphia are two of the best teams in the NFL. So the Cowboys are just absolute frauds, and they're always, they're always frauds. We hear this every single year from delusional Cowboys fans, like, oh, this is our year, man. Yeah, it's your year because you beat up on soft teams, okay? And then when you finally beat a team with a pulse, you lose, okay? You get your ass kicked, all right? And listen, Dak Prescott is a great regular season quarterback, but he will never lead you to the Super Bowl, okay? Mike McCarthy will never lead you to a Super Bowl victory, and the only reason why he has just one Super Bowl victory was because he was lucky enough to have, in my lifetime, in my opinion, the best quarterback ever, at least in terms of, yep, I see you smiling there, Ed, at least in terms of, throwing accuracy, throwing motion, and all that. Like Aaron Rodgers was the best, if we're just talking about from a pure quarterback standpoint, okay? And also they have Jerry Jones as their owner, okay? You were never going to win anything ever again with Jerry Jones as your owner, all right? Cowboys fans, if that hurts your feelings, okay, I'm not sorry, because you need to hear the truth, okay? But at the end of the day, I think, Washington is just another team with a losing record, and so I think Cowboys are going to have another dominant victory. I think they're going to win 42-21. And Ed, since you were obviously so excited about what I heard, why don't I jump straight to you and get your thoughts on it?
Well, as somebody that lives in the area in which I hear those three excruciating words of "we dem boys" day in, day out,
Oh,
it is on stickers, it is painted on cars, it is on hats, it is worn tattooed on people's arms. It is just everything. And
I can respect how passionate they are. I really can, but
absolutely,
I'm with you, Ed. That is just so annoying.
it is completely asinine to me, uh, which is part of the reason why, being a Texan, I was not one to follow the Cowboys growing up, I know I know a lot about their history. I certainly do. But that doesn't mean that I'm their biggest fan. It means that I had a lot of cowboy talk in my household, and I know maybe more than a lot of the Cowboys fans that try and talk to me about how they're better than the Packers, every chance they get. So as far as this game is concerned, I'm in complete agreement. Commanders, they're a team that is just trying to make it to the end of the season. Sam Howell's, shown some flashes of being a good quarterback. You're right about not turning the ball over, but that's just because you see so many different coverages in the NFL that he's just not used to seeing yet. But as far as the Cowboys go, they are obliterating people. They are obliterating lower level competition. But once they see somebody that is better coached than them, they are folding like a house of cards, really. Now, they have done some things schematically over the past few weeks to improve Dak's role in the offense, but and that will only get them so far, and that will get them through this game. So yes, I do have the Cowboys winning, much to my dismay, over the Commanders this weekend. Not this weekend, tomorrow or Turkey Day.
Well, it might as well be the weekend, right?
Yeah, the NFL weekend. So just beyond that, Matthew, what do you got on it?
Yeah, this is strangely coincidental. I was going to use an analogy to this, but I've got this little small water bottle here that I'll drink from, and on it has a label. Cap is a small part and possesses a choking hazard. That same label should be placed on the Dallas Cowboys. They are a choking hazard. Whether you like it or not, it is the truth. They go to the playoffs, for the most part, every year. Amazing regular season. Oh, the playoffs hit. Nope. Choke. So that's all I have to say when it comes to it, Dallas Cowboys. But there is a third game that I do want to talk about, and that is the Niners, the Seahawks. And, well, they're back. And who am I talking about? I'm talking about the San Francisco Niners. All right. Just when you thought they fell off. No. They got healthy, and they're looking like the elite NFL team that they are. Headlined by Brock Purdy at quarterback. They have their own Swiss Army knife, and Deebo Samuel, who's been unhealthy, but it looks like he's getting there. Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey at running back. I mean, this Niners team is not only stacked on offense, they are stacked on defense too. They are probably the most complete team in the NFL, and they just regained that NFC West lead over their opponent, the Seattle Seahawks. And just several years ago, this was one of the heated rivalries in the NFL. I mean, you had the Legion of Boom out there with Seattle at defense against Michael Crabtree and on offense. And this was one of the most heated rivals happening in the NFL at the time. But
don't you ever talk about me, Matthew.
All right, my bad.
I'm the best. I'm the best in the game.
Yeah, I'm gonna snatch your chain right off you. But yeah, the Seahawks are actually a pretty good team. I will say that Geno Smith isn't having the year that he did last year. Geno Smith came out of nowhere last year and had an amazing year. He is still doing good, but he's just not putting up the same numbers that he is last year. And I think it is showing. However, they are going to be without their starting running back in Kenneth Walker. And I think that alone right there is just going to pretty much be the end for the Seahawks for this game, even before it started. So with Kenneth Walker being out, I feel like that's just the biggest blow to Seattle, and it's almost like the game is already lost before it has even been played, because without Kenneth Walker there, they're going to struggle as far as being balanced on that offense. They do have a lot of studs out there with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, but I just think this Niners team, man, they are just that good on both sides of the ball. They've already been talked about as going to the Super Bowl, and Brock Purdy's been showing that he can come back from this injury that he had. I mean, his elbow was completely destroyed, and he's come back this year, and he's looking phenomenal. Like, he did not skip a beat. So this Niners team with Christian McCaffrey and all those freaks they got out there playing on offense and defense, I just think that there's just going to be too much for this Seattle Seahawks team. And with Kenneth Walker not being there, I just think that Seattle's going to take that L, and the Niners are going to continue to roll. Like I said at the beginning when I started talking about this, they're back, and they are for real. David, I mean, you got any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think San Francisco quickly got over its 3-game losing streak when they just murdered Jacksonville, and I don't think they're going to kill Seattle per se. I think it'll be a decent game because I feel like it maybe I'm wrong here because I don't keep up with a lot of the NFL on the West Coast, but I feel like Seattle and San Francisco, as far as I know, usually always play each other like fairly close. It's always competitive between those two teams. But San Francisco overall is the better team. And is this game in San Francisco, or rather Santa Clara or Seattle?
It is in Seattle, so I mean that does play a factor with the 12th man.
Okay. Well, I'm still going to take the 49ers. In fact, give me the Niners. Give me the Niners 19-16.
Wow, only 19 points. I mean, that's shocking, but
I think it'll be a defensive battle.
yeah, still think they'll pick up the win pretty easily. Ed, I mean, you agree with that as well?
Yeah, man, I do have some thoughts on this. And really, San Francisco, it's really a tale of two teams. Is Trent Williams playing or is he not playing? That's because when he's not playing, San Francisco looks average. They really do. Because he's such a big part of protecting the blind side for Purdy and opening the left side for McCaffrey, creating holes in time that he just can't do without him. So he's playing this week. I'm going to take the Niners. That's just plain and simple. With the game being in Seattle, that is an advantage for communication aspect for Seattle, but I don't think it's going to be enough because with Trent Williams playing, they are just head and shoulders above almost every other team in the NFC outside of Philadelphia and Detroit at this point.
Yeah, a question.
Yeah, and
no, go ahead.
I was just going to add real quick. Much like the Cowboys, the Niners have been dominating their opponents too. And in fact, and Ed, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think all of the 49ers wins have been by at least 18 or not 19 points. Like when they win, they just beat you down.
Yep. And Jacksonville is the latest victim.
Yep.
Yeah. And Jacksonville had been playing pretty good going into that game. So it just shows you that once they're on, and they beat you pretty convincingly. But this is the last thing that I want to touch on is with Bill Belichick possibly maybe calling it quits here soon. And if I'm correct, he is the oldest coach in the NFL, but behind him is Pete Carroll. Do you think Pete Carroll should be hanging it up here soon, or you think he just tries to have that fountain of youth continue to go through him as he's sprinting up and down the sidelines trying to play starting quarterback for his team?
I think
Pete Carroll's always been an energetic guy, so he's going to run up and down. It doesn't matter what age he is.
Mm-hmm.
He'll do it when he's 90 if he can.
Yeah.
Just still chewing the same piece of gum since 1997 when he was with the Patriots. So, that's a long time going for that stick of bubblicious.
Yeah.
So, Pete Carroll, he's a player's coach. He is somebody that connects with the players at any age. And he gets the best out of them because the players know that he is on their side, and he does it passionately and energetically and without apologies to anybody else outside that building. So I know Dave had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, Pete Carroll is really just a 21-year-old college partying kid trapped in a 70-year-old man's body.
Yeah, he is going for that world record of how long can you chew this piece of gum. Yeah, but yeah, it's just he's been doing it for a long time, and he's fun to watch on the sideline. But I wanted to ask that just to kind of see your guys' take on that, because he has been doing it for a while, and I mean, we'll see what the Seahawks do if they're on the decline or if they continue to climb up on with the talent that they have. So, but it's about all we have today, folks. We appreciate you being here. I speak for all of us that we hope that you have a wonderful and amazing Thanksgiving. Eat all the food you can, get stuffed up, watch football because it's going to be on. There's going to be some great games to watch. Enjoy your time with your family, your loved ones, whoever you may be spending it with. But also, we would appreciate if you could hit that like, subscribe button, share these videos, let people know about us, and we appreciate all that you guys do, and comment on here. Let us know what you guys feel your first memory, if you could think of Thanksgiving and football, just any fun memory that you could think of. We would love to hear it. We love to be engaged with you guys. So please add that. We love the feedback. But like I said, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Eat a turkey leg for us. Do a wishbone and watch some good football. But till then, guys, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.